Okay. So here's your chart. And actually, it's kind of cool that we're meeting on this new moon because I don't know if you noticed, but the new moon is at 2 degrees of Gemini, which is exactly on your Saturn. So, and Saturn is the planet of authority, and this is a new moon that's a lot about reclaiming your authority, and especially around how you think or what you know. So Saturn in the birth chart is the planet of fear and mastery. So like what we might feel insecure about early on and what we're here to master. And this is a big new beginning to have a new moon right on this point in terms of, well, with Saturn in Gemini, this is a lot about mastering the mental realm. And early on, it can show up as feeling like you don't know enough or you're not smart enough or you have to work really hard to whatever. And then it ends up being like mastery, like because you work at it, you know your mind, you know what you're thinking, you know what you know, and you trust what you know. And this is like a new beginning activating those themes. How does that sound?
That sounds beautiful.
Cool. And it's also, I want to say too, having Saturn in the 11th house, which I also have, I remember my astrology teacher saying Saturn in the 11th house was you're a leader or an outcast, because the 11th house is the house of groups and community. And Saturn in the 11th house can feel like, oh, I don't really belong anywhere. Do I belong with these people or those people? Or so it's a lot about just kind of claiming your own right to belong. And if something, if the community doesn't exist that you feel a sense of belonging in, you start something yourself and be a leader. So this is also, this is interesting because, and we'll get into bigger picture stuff, but just, there's a lot happening for you now in the 11th house over the next couple of months, because this is also the house where Venus is retrograde. And so this can really be a time of rethinking, like, who are my people and who do I really want to connect with? And maybe some, like, because the 11th house, it's community, but it's also like your friends, your tribe, your, people you hang out with. And Venus going retrograde here is kind of like, am I really being nourished by these connections? Are these really my people? Are there, I don't know, it could be like a sense of like, I don't really know who I want to connect with anymore. Who do I feel excited about? Does that
Yeah.
resonate at all?
Well, I think the decision to buy a villa, the most important thing to me was that it was close to my friends and neighbors and the people I know and love and trust. Like that was the number one reason I bought what I did over this week.
Awesome.
So for me, I've really discerned that that is being with my people is one of the most fulfilling parts of my life. And that's more important than moving to a different location, for example.
Awesome. Yeah, good. So that you have that clarity that it's all about the people around you. And that's very Saturn too, because Saturn really points to what's really important to you. What do you really care about? So Saturn in the 11th, Saturn in Gemini, this is a lot about prioritizing connections and friends and community. So
Yeah.
cool. Okay, so that's the immediate, like, right now kind of stuff. But in the bigger picture, the part of your chart that's being super activated and has been since last year and will continue until 2022, and I'll break it all down and get into all those specifics, but is this axis, this Leo and Aquarius part of your chart is being super activated by this guy, Uranus, who was here when you were born. And Uranus is now up here in Taurus. I'll tell you the astro techno, then I'll just tell you what it means. But basically, Uranus is up here now in the sky and forming a square to the Leo planets and forming a square to the Aquarius planets, and therefore activating this whole polarity in your chart, which is a pretty big headline in your chart. So I want to spend some time just talking about this part of your chart, and then talking about how it's being activated, and then talking about how it will be activated next year by both Saturn and Uranus. This is going to be super, super hot. So first of all, I don't know how, and I never remember what I say in previous readings, but your north node and south node, have we spent any time on that, or are you familiar at all with those parts of your chart, the
I'd
nodes?
say let's do a good refresher, Emily.
Okay, perfect. You'll just tell me if I'm boring you or you want to move on to something else. Okay.
No, I love this. I sponge it up like crazy, so you're never going to bore me.
Okay, cool. Okay, so the north node, which you have in Aquarius, and this is your moon right next to your north node, and I'll bring that one into, and this is Mars on the other side of your north node. The north node represents a way of being that's new on a soul level. And the north and south node are a lot about karma and soul's evolution and blah, blah. But on a very practical level, the north node shows a way of being that works best for you and creates the most fulfillment. But it can also feel like scary, because the idea is that the north node represents something you haven't done before as a soul. So it's something new. And the north node in Aquarius is kind of cool that you came in with the moon and Mars also in Aquarius to kind of like help pull you in that direction. It helps have extra weight over here. So Aquarius is a lot about freedom. And it's also the sign connected with community and friends. It has a similarity with the 11th house because Aquarius is the 11th sign. And there's also a big part here that's about like teamwork and collaboration and interdependence, not only because it's Aquarius, but also because it's in the 7th house. And the 7th house is the house of relationship. And so this is a lifetime of like reconnecting with your people and in a sense, not having to do everything yourself. And also in trusting like the bigger unfolding of things where it's like you don't have to make it all happen through your will. And this brings us over to the south node, which is always exactly opposite the north node. And the south node represents where you're coming from as a soul. So it's a way of being that's familiar, but it's almost like you've kind of been there, done that, or maybe overdone it in previous incarnations. So there's no growth there, is the idea, and no fulfillment. And the South Node in Leo is coming from lifetimes of, Leo and the first house, you have kind of a double whammy of this. The first house is the house of the self, and Leo is very much the sign of individuality. And Leo is also like the king or the queen. So this sense of lifetimes where you survived by asserting your will and doing everything yourself. And almost like it has to be hard and forceful to get your needs met. And coming in with the South Node in Leo, it also means you come in with a tremendous amount of creative energy and like a strong sense of self that in a way, in this time around, you're here to kind of help other people find who they are. It's like that's something you come in with that naturally, but not everyone does. And so this is like about being an inspiration to other people, inspiring other people to express more of who they are. There's also this planet, Mercury, which is fairly close to your south node. And Mercury is the mind. And so there's also a sense of like having, like coming in with a really strong mind and like the ability to figure things out on your own. But there's a way that that's like not not super fulfilling. It's easy and you're good at it, but it's not like where the juice is in a sense. And this lifetime with the moon on your north node, and the moon is more about the heart and more about feelings. This is really a shift from navigating in an overly mental way to navigating in more of a heart intuitive. And the Aquarius way, Aquarius is not willful. Aquarius is more like, let me set my intention. I know what I want. I know where I'm headed. And then just like, oh, this is how it's going to unfold, like sort of by magic. Like things fall into place naturally and easily. And a lot happens through other people. So how's all this sounding so far?
Good. Yeah, I'm on it.
Okay, cool. And, I want to say too, there's a sense with both the moon and Mars together with the North Node, it's almost like, since Mars is like your desire and the moon is what do you need? What's going to nurture you and fulfill you? It's almost like it's kind of an interesting combo because it's almost like this lifetime is a lot about getting in touch with your desire and your needs, where even though those previous incarnations were very like self motivated, but it's almost like it, it it wasn't like you weren't doing things that actually maybe that you exactly wanted to or that really fed you emotionally. And maybe since Leo, like I said, it's like the king or the queen, maybe this was about being in a position of power where you had a lot of power to assert your will and tell people what to do or whatever, but it wasn't really about you finding fulfillment personally or really like getting to express your desire and express your needs, more like being in a role, like like the way that people in seats of power don't necessarily have a very satisfying personal life.
Right.
And I want to say that this lifetime around a relationship, and I know you just got out of a marriage that was not the most fulfilling, let's say, but you're really this is a partnership lifetime, and there's more coming your way, and there's a lot that's going to be activated in your seventh house over the next year and beyond, in the relationship house. So I think you're just like clearing the slate to prepare for something really new and really good coming into this part of your chart, because you
All
actually
right.
do have good relationship karma. um,
Good.
okay, so how's all that sounding, feeling?
Oh, I love the idea of wiping the slate clean. I feel like that's what I've been doing the last year is just really working on myself, like falling in love with myself. So I
Yes.
can be ready for whatever is coming next. And I don't like have a need to have a partner. It just is, if it happens, great. In a way, I'm really looking forward to having the chance to live by myself and have my own space.
Yeah.
And if I
Yeah.
have a fun date or something, great. But it's not like I'm feeling so unsatisfied that I don't have that component in my life.
Right. And I would say that, and you've maybe heard me say this on the calls. I think that for people who are single, the rest of this year is just not great for starting a new relationship, because we have the Venus retrograde and then the Mars retrograde. Those are both not auspicious for new relationships. So my sense is that next year is, and like I said, and I'll talk about how your seventh house is being activated next year, especially, or actually starting at the end of this year. So I think next year is really when something comes in, and I totally get that it might be just fine to be alone and take a little break for the time being. And I think that's wise for the rest of 2020, more or less. Not that a little date couldn't come in here and there or something, but it's more of a solo time. Um,
Yeah.
so and to say too that this axis of the first house, seventh house, this is a big theme in your life, like how to do that balance between self and other. And this is part of what's being reworked right now, as the planets in the first house, the planets in the seventh house, the opposition between the two, as these all get activated, you're really reworking, like, am I giving too much to other people, seventh house? Am I, too focused on myself? Where's the right balance between self and other? And in a time where you might be going to extremes to balance it out. If it's been way too far in one direction, then this is a time of like, oh, the pendulum is swinging the other way. It's like, okay, if you've been sacrificing your own needs for another person, then screw that, we're doing the opposite now. So what's happening here with Uranus, so now I'm pointing to something in the sky, so it's not here in your birth chart, but transposing the sky onto your chart, Uranus is about here. And the first planet it's been activating, and this started last year and was just exact for the first time earlier this month. So super strong right now. And this is actually cool in terms of all these speedy changes that are happening. Um, Uranus up here activating your Mercury, the mind. And so and Uranus is the planet of revolution and liberation and acceleration. So here you are in this super Uranian time. And again, especially this month when this is exact for the first time, where suddenly things are happening really quickly. And Uranus to Mercury is a really cool influence because Mercury and Uranus get along. Like they're naturally, Uranus is the higher octave of Mercury. They have a natural affinity, where Mercury is the day-to-day mind and Uranus is considered the higher mind, or like the mind of God, or, you know, when you just get that lightning bolt of illumination, it's not because you figured it out or did a lot of research. It's just boom, I just know it. So you've been in a time, and again, this started last year and it got pretty close last year. It was really strong, like all summer. And Uranian energy can be it's super activating and can be very restless. And it's kind of like anything in your life that feels limiting is just like, I got to get out of here now. Like, you
Oh
know,
yeah,
so you've been in this huge, you know, breaking free phase and revolution, personal revolution phase,
totally.
right? And it all starts with Mercury, the mind. And Mercury is also the planet of your day-to-day environment. So Uranus to Mercury is like, bam, shifting it all, like everything changing. So things changing really quickly and freeing yourself really dramatically. And the next planet that is being influenced, and this won't be exact until next year, but Uranus gets pretty close this year before going retrograde. And so you're feeling this one too, which is the moon. And the moon, Uranus to the moon can really bring up, it's like having sudden awareness of, what do I really need? What's really important to me? And this is so much about relationship here with the moon in the 7th house. How have my needs been met or not met? Where have I been sacrificing my needs or not communicating my needs? Because there's also something here, again, just to come back to your birth chart for a minute, being born with Mercury, planet of the mind and communication, opposite the moon, planet of your emotions, your heart, when these two are opposite, there can be like a kind of block around expressing your needs, or maybe even talking yourself out of your needs, right? Because oh, I feel something, I need something, and then the mind kicks in, oh, well, blah, 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 you know? And so there's this like head heart
Totally.
polarity here, right? Is that resonating
Yeah.
for you?
Yes.
Okay, so this, as Uranus is up here and activating both of these points and this polarity between the two, and just to back up for a sec and say, this is a once in a lifetime influence, right? Uranus has only gone this far in your lifetime, meaning it's not going to make it all the way around again. It takes 84 years to go all the way around. So that's why this is such a big deal. This is like a life changer, because when there's a slow moving planet that's activating this point of tension in your chart, and an opposition is considered the angle of maximum tension, because it's like, oh, these parts of myself are like, one's over here, one's over there, and so as this is getting activated, it's like there can be total reversals. Uranus is a planet of reversals, turning it all around, complete revolution in terms of how these parts of yourself have been relating to each other and operating. And sometimes, you know, you can just like find yourself blurting shit out that you might have suppressed before, felt like you had to hold back before. And then this Uranian energy is kind of like throwing a dynamite stick in, like, it's all erupting. And so this is a lot about the erupting of what's been suppressed around what you really need and how you really feel. And again, especially around relationship. And it's so perfect that you are where you are, because this is the kind of influence that asks you to like radically change everything that's not working, right? And you're totally freeing yourself to open up to entirely new possibilities. And that's Uranian energy. It's the quantum leap. It's not the slow slogging step by step, one brick at a time. It's like, oh, suddenly it's all different.
Awesome.
Yeah. And this influence to your moon will continue into early 2022. And at the same time, as Uranus is influencing your moon, it's also influencing the north and south node. And what's cool here is that it can make you aware of, and Uranian energy is very like revelatory, like, aha, oh my God, I never saw it that way. Woo. So you can have a lot of great insights into what doesn't work, the south node, and can separate from that, because Uranian energy is also, like I said, it's liberating. It rules breaks of all kinds, breaking free, breaking through, breaking up. And so this sense of really breaking free from some old ways of being that have held you back. And at the same time, it's also activating the north node. So it's like this acceleration around stepping into your soul's purpose, and more kind of excitement about that, excitement about the future, and excitement about the people coming into your life. And obviously, anything around socializing is super weird right now, but Uranian energy it really tends to bring, well, and especially activating the north node tends to bring new people into your life. And I'm saying especially with the north node, because the north node is all about, or partly about, helpful people, like people who are helping you evolve, and people who are helping to take your life to the next level. So this is really stimulating the north node again, especially next year. And I feel like there's some very significant people coming into your life again, especially next year, like really helpful people, maybe big, partnership kind of thing, or friends or whatever, but really helpful people coming in. And maybe some of that happening through work. I just want to bring in the 10th house here for a sec, because that's the house of career, and that's where Uranus is. And that's, I don't know, I mean, has your work life been changing too, or is that more or less status quo?
Status quo,
Mm-hmm.
thankfully.
Mm-hmm.
I need something status quo, and it's been satisfying and wonderful, and the people I work with have been very supportive of me and what's been going on in my life.
Great. Awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Okay, so all of that is happening, which is a lot, and which is a very big deal. And what's also happening is that Saturn, here when you were born, is now over here. And so what Saturn is doing is Saturn crossed into your 7th house, which is a very big deal, first of all. And let me just back up and talk about that for a sec. So basically, Saturn has a 29-year cycle. So it went around once, you had your Saturn return, and now it's going around a second time. And as Saturn has been traveling through the lower half of your chart for the past about 14 years, the lower half of the chart is all about what's happening below the surface. Because basically, as we look at the chart, we can imagine that the horizon line is across the center. So everything above that line was visible, everything below that line is invisible. And Saturn, as it moves through your chart, it really points to, where are you at? What are you working on during this time? Where's the focus? And so Saturn's been below the horizon. Saturn's been in this lower part of your chart, more about your inner world and inner work for the past 14 years. And it just like as of March, Saturn crossed over this line from the 6th house to the 7th house. It crossed the horizon line. And this is a very big deal. The transition from the 6th house, the 6th house is a phase of preparation, because it's like, oh, I'm about to like be seen more. 7th house, I'm about to, relationship is about to become more of a priority. 7th house. 6th house, I better get ready for that. I better prepare. I got to get my shit together. So the 6th house is a real like getting it together phase. And you've been in that phase for the past about 3 years. So it can be a big focus on work, on self-work, on health and healing. And then Saturn moves into the 7th house, and the focus is more on relationship and more on the public, and more, it's a lot more social and more, it like, one basic way to think about the houses is they alternate between being more internal and more external. So you've been in a more internal phase, like the past 3 years with Saturn in the 6th house, working shit out and working on yourself, working on your health. And then in March, Saturn crossed into the 7th house, but now Saturn's going retrograde. It's going to come back into the 6th house in July, and then it'll cross again into the 7th house in December. And then it'll stay there for the next couple of years. So basically it's like, yeah, there's a part of you that's ready to be sort of out there more and more social and maybe a new relationship. And then it's like, oh no, actually, you know what? I'm not quite ready for that. There's kind of more behind the scenes work to do here. And maybe, again, more of a focus on just like 6th house is about organization and simplification and kind of just getting things together, preparing. But then as of December, when Saturn moves into your 7th house, it's going to stay there for a while. And what's very cool, and I'll come back to Saturn and talk about Saturn activating these Aquarius Leo guys. But what's very cool is that Jupiter, which is the planet of opportunities and luck and where are the doors opening? It's, you know, Jupiter's the great benefic, so it's all about all things beneficial. Jupiter is also moving into your 7th house in December and will be there for a year. So this is why I'm saying next year is very, I think, very positive around relationship. And what happens is Saturn and Jupiter both move into Aquarius in December, and then they form a conjunction. And that only happens every 20 years, a conjunction between Jupiter and Saturn. And so that's a very important seed planting. And for you, it's happening in the 7th house of relationship. So this isn't just about Saturn moving through your 7th house, oh, Jupiter moving through your 7th house. It's that there's this seed planting that's happening there. And so first of all, I want to say, like, perfect timing in terms of divorce, because this, what tends to happen when there's a big like initiation, like two slow moving planets coming together and boom, like planting a seed, kind of like a new moon, but this will be like a 20-year new moon. It tends to be that before that happens, leading up to that conjunction, there's a clearing out to prepare for it. It's kind of like, it's sort of like an extended balsamic moon. You know, right before the new moon, we get a couple of days balsamic moon, time to empty out and let go and surrender. Well, in this case, you've been kind of, let's say, balsamic, you've been kind of closing out a cycle, a relationship cycle, in preparation for this new seed planting. Is this making sense? You
Oh,
following?
yeah, for sure.
Okay, cool. So I think this is super auspicious that this is going to happen in December. I think it's December 21st, right at winter solstice, in your 7th house, in Aquarius, which is a really beneficial sign for you since that's your north node. And so there's this sense of, at the end of the year, really at that point, really being ready for a new relationship, and one that feels liberating, because there's something here too about, you've got all this Aquarius in your seventh house and eighth house, which is also a relationship house. But your seventh house is ruled by Saturn. This is the sign Capricorn on your seventh house. And sometimes with Capricorn on the seventh house, it's like relationship can feel more like a burden or more like a responsibility. Like, and of course, there's always responsibility in relationship, but like sort of like heavy. And what's coming in, and I think you just like divested yourself of heavy burden relationship where you take too much responsibility. And what's
Yeah.
coming in is like this Aquarian freedom and lightness. Aquarius is air. It's more like there's more spaciousness, there's more breath, there's more room to move, where Capricorn can feel quite constricted and right. So how's that sounding, feeling?
Good. My divorce isn't final yet. I mean, it feels like it's final in my head, in my heart, in every part of my being. It's just like the paper isn't signed. All the legality stuff's not there, but it hopefully in the next like 6 or 8 weeks it should be done. But you're spot on, because that's a complete description of how I felt in my old marriage. Just heavy responsibility and constricted, and yeah. So I'm ready for the light.
Woohoo, the light is coming.
Yay!
Yeah, this is very auspicious. The Jupiter Saturn thing is super auspicious. And what's cool too is that, as right now Saturn is at the very early, um right at the beginning of Aquarius still, and it'll come back to that point. And as Saturn is in early Aquarius, it's harmonizing with your Saturn, which is very helpful. So it can be like the things that are typically so hard, since Saturn represents what's, like I said, fear and mastery, like what we have to work at, the
Yeah.
things that are typically so hard are suddenly there's more ease and flow around that. And I think one of the big deals with Saturn in Gemini can be around making decisions, and like I said, like really trusting your own mind, because that Gemini, it's can go into the duality so easily, and the like, is it this or this? Oh, I could totally see how it makes sense this way. Oh, it also makes sense this way. Like, so you can kind of like drive yourself crazy in your mind.
Is
Um,
this happening right now? What you're talking about, this influence, or
yeah,
in?
that's kind of always true,
Oh,
but now it's easier. Now
yeah,
it's like there's this more of a sense of like owning your truth and knowing your truth and standing in your truth, and not vacillating in the way that Saturn, not vacillating because you don't doubt yourself in a way that maybe you used to. Like there's a kind of clarity of, or I want to say a sense of authority coming in around what you know.
yeah, yeah.
I
True.
mean, and this is, Aquarius is the sign of truth also, and like the willingness to speak your truth and stand in your truth. Where with Leo, you know, part of where Leo can go is like Leo thinks it has to play a role. Leo's Leo rules the theater, drama, acting, right? So Leo can also feel like, okay, if I'm going into a situation, I need to know what my role is and sort of plug myself in to play a certain role so that people will understand me and know how to respond. Aquarius is more like, I'm not playing your stinking role. Like I'm just going to be myself and do my own thing. And you might get it and you might not. And either way, that's cool because I'm doing my thing, like just following my own truth, you know? And this Saturn in Gemini can really wants to be understood by other people, so that it can have a hard time just like claiming truth, because it's like, well, what if they don't like it, or what if I, well, and particularly for your Saturn here, because it's opposite Neptune, and that can bring in a lot of self-doubt. there can be this sense like, yeah, I know what I think. And then it's like, oh, wait, do I? Oh, could it? But maybe it's this other thing. So I feel like Saturn in the sky now in Aquarius, harmonizing with the Saturn in your birth chart, it's like bringing more strength and stability and solidity to what you know. And just like, no, you know what you know. You can trust it. You can move forward
Totally.
with it, right? Cool.
Yeah.
Okay. So what happens next year that gets so interesting here, in addition to all this, Saturn moving into the seventh, Jupiter moving into the seventh, these relationship opportunities opening up, is that Saturn and Uranus in the sky are going to be in a square to each other. And as they're doing, so basically Saturn here, Uranus here, making red lines to each other. And as they're doing that, they'll be activating your Leo and Aquarius planets. And in fact, in February, Saturn will be at 7 degrees of Aquarius, exactly opposite Mercury. Uranus will be at 7 degrees of Taurus, exactly squaring Mercury. And so my sense is like, so Mercury is going to get influenced by both planets at the same time. And then the same thing happens with your moon in June of next year. In June of next year, Saturn will be at 13 degrees Aquarius. Uranus will be at 13 degrees of Taurus, both activate, or the moon being activated by both planets at the same time. So let me say a little bit about this kind of vibe and some ideas about it. So where Uranus is all about breaking free, well, I don't need to tell you about it. You've been living this Uranian energy, right? And the quantum leap and liberation and revolution and shaking things up. And it can feel exciting and also can feel a little chaotic and unstable, and everything's changing and you're kind of in the swirl. And Uranus in myth is the sky god, so it can be the sense of like, yeah, everything's up in the air, it's just like up in the air, swirling around. Whoa. And then Saturn comes along, and Saturn is a very, very different vibe. Saturn's about step-by-step process and what's your long-term plan. With Uranus, you can't really make plans. You just have to kind of be on the roller coaster and flow with change, because you don't know what's coming next. It's wild ride. But Saturn is more like slow and deliberate and linear and planning. And Saturn is also very earthy. It's very much about bringing things into form and grounding them and creating something lasting and solid and taking responsibility and doing the work. So on the one hand, there's this Uranian like quantum leap and sky's the limit and let's, just going on the ride. And then Saturn is more like, okay, but what form is it coming in, and what work needs to be done? So next year, as both of these forces are at play, I think this is a time of, like, I think between now and basically the rest of the year, I feel like it's just like trusting the flow and following, the breadcrumbs. Oh, now I'm here. Now this is happening. Now this is happening. Cool. Going on the ride. And then next year, as more of this Saturn influence comes in, I think this is really like stabilizing. This will be about stabilizing a lot of the changes that you're in now, and kind of like landing those changes in ways that sort of like finding the right form for things to continue in a long-term way, where right now I think that would be impossible because it's just too swirly, and it's still like all, there's still a lot up in the air, I would think. And next year it's like when things start to land, and so there's still that energy of liberation and kind of needing to do things differently and shake it up, but there's also more of a sense of bringing things together. And yeah, so I feel like next year is when things come together more, where this year it might just be a lot about things getting sort of torn apart, but in good ways,
Yeah.
and the useful breaks and separations. And next year it's like, okay, but what wants to come back together now with this new awareness and with this new form? And I think, particularly, thinking about your moon, um, like I said, it has to do with what do you need emotionally and what really feeds you. And I feel like there's something in this initial Uranian activation of the moon. And it's perfect. You're in the fridge talking about the moon. Moon is
Yep.
like
Carrot sounds good.
nice. um, there's a sense of I feel like there's something really changing in terms of parenting also, since the moon and obviously things are changing in your family, right? And right now the Uranian energy to the moon is like, yeah, this big rearranging and separation, all of that. But with Saturn here next year, it's I feel like there's this about really getting clear about what's the structure, what's the family structure, the parenting structure that's going to work best for you, for everyone. Um, and sort of being able to establish that, where now this might, between now and next year, it might be more of a like phase of experimentation, and because it's new and not knowing and sort of trying things out. But next year, more of the solidification around what's this new family structure going to look
Oh,
like.
God, that feels good, Emily. I'm glad you brought that up, because yeah, that's spot on right now. It's just I'm questioning everything about how it is to be a parent to teenagers and not having a dad around, and how much do I let go and what do I reinforce, and it's hard.
Is your soon-to-be ex is he parenting? Is that part of the plan or no?
Nope. I
You're
mean,
gonna
he might see him when he feels like it, but there needs to be a lot of healing happening between him and the kids for a regular, steady kind of a weekly schedule. That's not in the cards right now.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah.
It's interesting too to think about Saturn coming up on your moon, because where the moon is the mother archetype, right? Saturn is the father archetype. So I'm finding that quite poetic and literal, that Saturn is going to be joining with your moon, Saturn the father. It's kind of like you taking on father and mother, or how to, which,
Try to both. Yeah.
yeah. Um, and Saturn is the planet of responsibility. And when Saturn's around, it can feel like, okay, this is, a lot to be responsible here for. But I feel like, and there's, it's nice because I feel like there's like a new, it's almost like an emotional rebirth, or a rebirth of your emotional life, that's happening over the next year with both Saturn and Uranus influencing the moon, like really closing out a chapter of, like a long chapter of feeling malnourished on some
Totally.
level,
Yep.
right? And so you're starting this whole new phase of getting really clear. And this is part of the gift of Saturn. This is part of why Saturn influences are so helpful, because Saturn really clarifies and defines. So like a period, and again, especially next year, of really, because again, I think this year it's so, you're just kind of like moment to moment. What do I need next? Okay, like just sort of navigating more helter skelter. But next year, when more of this solidifying energy comes in, then there's a real clarity and definition around, this nurtures me, this does not nurture me, this, I need more of this, I don't need that. Really, like Saturn is very very good with defining boundaries, which I think is also a big theme that comes in next year around the whole family piece, and getting really clear about what do you need to be able to take on this responsibility. And I want to say too that I think it's really important, because there is this tendency to, I think, do too much yourself. like to take on too much on your own.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like part of what wants to happen here with this seventh house moon activation is like really getting clear about what kind of support you need and who are the people who are going to be good support people, who are good helpers, and like maybe something around letting go of control and allowing, like, I feel like there wasn't a lot of receiving that happened in these previous lifetimes, almost like you had to be too on and too like doing it on your own to really receive.
Mm-hmm.
um so I feel like that's one of the big kind of new ways of being that's coming in, like sort of um spreading the responsibility in a sense, maybe, so it's not so burdensome,
Mm-hmm.
and being willing to receive and attracting the right people who are going to be able to do that for you, give you what you need. um how's all that sounding, feeling?
Spot on.
Okay, cool. um so these are the headlines, this whole Saturn, Uranus, and then Jupiter thing. And actually, I want to mention that I think, there's that beautiful thing that happens with Jupiter and Saturn in December, the end of December. And then in February of next year, Jupiter, again, planet of opportunities and open doors and expansion and risk taking and all things positive. Jupiter is going to be right on your moon and north node in February. And I think that's about like the right helpful people coming into your life. This could also be a great relationship time, new relationship coming in. Often Jupiter in the seventh house is associated with new relationships. So that's kind of exciting. And maybe that's also a point when some of the stuff that's like kind of bubbling as possibility right now, like comes into manifestation.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think this is, I think February is a great time around, like, if there's something you've been wanting to do that feels kind of risky, or, like putting yourself out there, February is a good time to do it. You have some great cosmic support for like just the right people being there to
Awesome.
help out. Um, so there's, yeah, other things I could talk about, but I want to just check in and see if you have questions, if there's anything I didn't talk about that you wanted to, that feels important.
Hold on a second. All right. You have time to mow the grass. All right, baby.
All right, I'm gonna go step back there, see what's drenched and see what's not, because I know it rained last night.
Okay. Love you. That was my son just waking up.
He sounds so old. I mean,
He's
so adult.
he's 16. That's I love him, but he's definitely the tougher of the two to parent, especially these days.
Oh man. Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe you can speak a little bit more to my son and daughter relationship with me in the chart, and just some things to be conscientious of. Is that a possibility?
You know what I could do is I'm happy to bring up his chart quickly if you tell me his
Yes.
info.
He's
And
go
wait, let
ahead.
me. Okay, wait. Okay, what's his first name?
And same with my daughter. His name is George.
Okay, birthday.
12/17/2003
Do you
at
know? Yep.
1:11 in the afternoon.
Cool.
Katie was there holding one of my legs up.
Aw, is that in Toledo?
Yes.
Okay. And then what's your daughter's name?
Kate. Kate, just like my sister.
Okay.
Kate. And her birthday is 11/19/2000. And she was born at, I want to say 9:30 at night. think that's right. 9:30 at night.
Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at, and then I'll bring it up on the screen. Let me just get this. I'm going to look at, I'm going to look at your two charts together. And okay. So this is, and I know this is like astro overload here, but this is
No,
his,
it's awesome, Emily. It's so
okay, good.
cool.
So this is his chart on the inside and your chart on the outside. And when we do this, it's like looking at how do you influence each other, and what's like, how can you be helpful to him is
Yeah.
a good
No.
question,
Oh
right?
my gosh. I need that. I need that so bad.
Okay, this is really interesting because, and one of the things I like to pay attention to is like how the nodes interact, where the nodes fall in each other's charts. And so here's your north node that we've been talking about, and it's very close to his Neptune. Like, so basically his Neptune is on your north node, which typically means that, so if someone's Neptune is on your north node, they're in your life as a spiritual teacher, and especially around letting go.
Oh shit.
Neptune is all about surrender, let go, let goddess. Like, this is bigger. There's something bigger going on here. And it's also, this is kind of confusing too, because that means that his Neptune is also really close to your moon. And Neptune can feel like a cloud of confusion. So here's the moon, like you as mom, right? And it's the moon in Aquarius. Aquarius doesn't have a lot of confusion associated with it. But there's something about being around him where like the fog can kind of roll in, and you might feel like you sort of lose that, I don't know, sharpness or clarity or definition. I think it's ultimately good for you, but it's kind of a weird aspect for being a mom to someone, because it's almost like his being sort of forces you to let go of who you thought you were supposed to be as a mom or something like that.
100%. Yeah. Yep.
And do you want to say something about how, I mean, like, is there a like, what's hard about, I mean, and I know parenting a teenager when you're not supposed to leave the house or whatever is just hard, but what's hard for you about that relationship?
Well, he's a nice kid until I say the word no. And he argues until he is right. He always has to be right. He's very much had his mind made up about everything. And there's no wiggle room. If I say yes to one cookie, it's 1,000 cookies every day. He's just a very strong, forceful, my way or no way at all kind of a kid.
Oh man. Uh-huh. I'm seeing
And will
that.
do whatever it takes for him to get his way, which, I feel like sometimes he doesn't always tell me the truth. And so there's that. And it's hard now because I feel like he's just doing the absolute minimum to get by in terms of achieving at school and sports, when I know he's so smart and I know he could do so much more. And then I think to myself, well, let it go, Megan. This is his life. He can make these choices. So that's kind of my snapshot for you.
Yeah, and I see I mean, he's got Aries rising, Aries, like super, like, I know what I want and I'm going to get it. And particularly because then he has Mars, the ruler of Aries, in Aries, super powerful position, very assertive. And then he's a Sagittarius sun with his sun conjunct Pluto, which is incredibly willful.
Yes.
And incredibly, and Sag always wants more, 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 more.
Yep.
Right. Sag is all about expansion and excess and overdoing it. And I think absolutely, I think the best thing you can do is let go. I don't think you have a choice.
Well, when I don't let go, we have lots of fights, and I'm the helicopter mom of America. And so when I do let go, easier for me, but then my polarity in my head's like, well, am I doing the right thing? Am I being a good role model? There's those voices going on all the time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, and there's something about the connection too between you two. This is the other node connection you have. Here's his south node in Scorpio. So that's where he's coming from, which is quite intense. And he's actually, his trajectory is from Scorpio to Taurus. And he's actually here to learn to be more peaceful and receptive and not quite so intense and all or nothing, and which is Scorpio. But here's your Jupiter, which is close to his south node. And what this means is that there's a way that being around him, well, for one thing, I want to say whenever there's a south node connection, that's a past life contract. And there's a way that you had some kind of lifetime together where something happened, some kind of crisis, Scorpio happened, and you lost your sense of like trust in yourself. And being around him can bring up this insecurity around not knowing if you can really trust yourself. Does that resonate at all?
Yeah.
So it's almost like that's something not to be believed in a sense. Like there's some, and it's always tricky with south node connections because what comes up is it's not present time. There's some deep karmic something you're working out on some other level, and not, it doesn't necessarily make sense, or something that you can wrap your mind around so much more. It's like you sense it on a feeling level, where like you can feel really undermined in your own faith in yourself, just by his like existence, uh, by being around you. And so this is very much like he's your spiritual teacher big time. And I think letting go is the right thing. Like I think
Thank you. Thank you for
that's all you
saying
can
that.
do.
I needed that affirmation.
Okay, I'm glad
He's told me that. He's told me that so much in the last 6 months. Like those are the words that come out of his mouth. Just let go, Mom. I got this.
Yeah, yeah. And in a way, that's where you are also in his life to help him on a spiritual level. Your North Node being on his Neptune is really helpful. Like um, by doing, it's like by being really solid in your own practice and your own spiritual life, and what's happening with you internally, and just being really clear and strong in that. That's helping him.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, should we do a quickie with your daughter too?
Yes, please, of course. My
Okay.
sweet girl.
Okay, is she the easy one?
Easier.
Easier. Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. So here she is on the, oh, yeah. Well, yeah. Oh my God. So much easier. You guys are all about the North Node connections. You've got North Node up the yin yang here. This is great. So look, this is her on the inside, you on the outside. This is your sun right on her North Node. That is lovely. So basically, like when you have a sun North Node connection, it's like you just want to make her happy. And like you have the ability to bring out happiness in each other. And like she can help strengthen your sense of self. I mean, this is beautiful too, that she has a North Node in Cancer, your sun in Cancer. Cancer is the sign of mothering and nurturing. So she's coming from, like for her soul trajectory, she's coming from Capricorn. So lifetimes of being more emotionally deprived. And this is a lifetime of coming into more emotional fulfillment. And you're someone who's very like set up to help her with that. It's kind of like, your son's in cancer, you know how to do cancer. And she's like, oh, I've never done cancer before, it's new to me. It's like, great, beautiful. That's beautiful.
Awesome.
And then look, okay, what I was saying about your Jupiter on George's south node, and how that kind of can undermine your sense of trust in yourself. You've got a very different dynamic with Kate, where your Jupiter is very close to her sun, which is, it's like she's lighting up your trust in yourself, and you're expanding her sense of self, and there's some ease around that, which is quite nice. And then the other north node thing, this is your north node in Aquarius, right on her Uranus. And in the birth chart, Uranus is a lot about individuality and like what makes you uniquely you, like your own personal genius and unconventionality. And you totally support that in her. You can help bring that out in her. Like, yes, you can be exactly who you are. It's kind of cool. I think you do that for each other. I think that goes both ways, where you just like, you both get to be who you are, and that's cool. Like, not, there isn't, it seems like there's not a lot of like, okay, you're my daughter, so you got to be this certain way to get love from me or something. Like, no, it's just like there's a recognition. It's like some sense of understanding who the other one is, and appreciation of that, and helping to bring that out in each other.
Yeah, true.
Is there any, like, I don't know, issue or something, anything that's hard that you want to?
Boy, no. I mean, nothing that, no,
Because this
not
seems
that.
pretty, yeah, this seems pretty, this is a lot. And of course, like, parent child, there's always stuff, right? But this just seems a lot less mysterious in a sense than what happens with your son, because it
Yeah.
seems like with him, it just, there's like weirdness that you can't really get your mind around, or that can't, it's like less tangible. The Neptune connection is always sort of vague and amorphous, and like something's happening that I can't identify what it is, because it's all like old karmic stuff that isn't about present time. So, but it feels like things are just more straightforward with your daughter, and not so murky or weird.
Yeah, I would say that's true.
Cool.
Good.
Okay. So does that feel like a good place to call it a reading? Do you feel like you got what you needed?
Oh,
Or
yeah,
want
that
to?
was fun.
Okay.
Totally entertaining,
Good.
and yeah, it feels, yeah, I love doing stuff like this. This is a treat myself kind of a day.
Yay. Yay, treating yourself.